let's talk about the University of Michigan and what is at stake for Sherrone Moore in year 3. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching Adapt and Respond, thank you for joining us here. We talk college football year round. If that is something you're into, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video, and answer the question in the comments below. What do you think is the ceiling for Michigan in 2025? This is year 2 of the Sherrone Moore experience, and he's already accomplished quite a bit going into this season. I'm going to talk about that. I really did want to dig into what Sherrone Moore has done that, frankly, Dan Lanning has not, James Franklin has not, Kurt Signetti has not. Like, we can keep going down the list on this. But I also want to remind you that we have an audio podcast on Apple and Spotify. And if you are kind enough to go to Apple, Spotify, listen to the podcast, give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify, go to the link in the description below, and I will send you one of these stickers gratis, because it means that much to me that you took that time and handwritten note from me saying thanks for listening to the show. And so do those things. Hit the link in the description so that I can send you one of these stickers. Okay. Sherrone Moore has beaten Ohio State back-to-back years when he has been the head coach in charge. Yes, he was the interim in 2023, but they won that game, and Jim Harbaugh was not in the building. 2024, Jim Harbaugh is in Los Angeles. They still went to Columbus, and they got a W. James Franklin can't say that. James Franklin is 0-7 against both Ohio State and Michigan the last 7 times they have played, and 1-15 as head coach at Penn State against top 5 opponents. Dan Lanning lost to beat Ohio State at Oregon, lost to Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Okay. Keep going down the line on this one, right? And you can get pretty deep before you find out the number of men that have gone 2-0 in their first attempts against the Buckeyes. If nothing else, Sherrone Moore has that going for him as a young coach and a coach who many people believe can be a star in the sport. Even so, we have to acknowledge that the NCAA's infraction committee is still going to levy something like a penalty, something like a punishment that I'm sure Michigan will fight about them breaking NCAA bylaw 11.1.2, where it says, hey, you cannot go to another team's stadium and electronically video their signals, decipher them, and then, tell everybody what's going on the sideline. That's what they did. The abbreviation that I like to use is sign stealing. Is it illegal to steal signs? No, it is not illegal to steal signs. It is illegal to record them, take them home, and then to break them down on a television, repeatedly play and replay. If you can do it in real time on the sideline, everybody's down with that. We do that in baseball every single day. If your signs are easy enough for me to steal, they deserve to be stolen on the field. But this is the same thing that we were beating the hell out of the Houston Astros for doing. We just don't like it because it's cheating. We don't like cheating. Don't cheat to win. That is aside from whatever the hell Matt Weiss had going on, where he had access to so many people's personal information, and we still don't know the great extent of harm he might have done. Well, Sherrone Moore and Jim Harbaugh were a part of the same, coaching office? Yes, coaching office. We'll go with that. I'm also looking at this from the standpoint of they were co-offensive coordinators at the time, right? Sherrone Moore and Matt Weiss, and then Matt Weiss was relieved of his duties, so forth, so on. Okay. You go into 2024, you're expecting Alex Orji to be the guy. He is not. He's actually pretty bad. You just don't trust him to throw the football past the first half of the first game. Jack Tuttle's hurt, so you go with Davis Warren, former walk-on. He's not good, but he's the best option you have. Jack Tuttle gets healthy. He's not good. You go down 14-0 to Washington. You almost lose to USC. You should have lost to USC. You probably should have lost to Minnesota. You survive Arkansas State. You beat Fresno State, but you're so bad at quarterback by the end of the year that you go get their starter, Mikey King, who comes in injured, But it's okay because you've signed the number one player and the number one quarterback in the 2025 class in Bryce Underwood for the cool price of $12 million over the course of his time at the University of Michigan. That in and of itself is interesting to me. Bryce Underwood going to LSU would have made a lot more sense for me because LSU is going to be a place where you throw the ball around. Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, now Garrett Nussmeier. You can go for 3,000 yards. You can go for 4,000 yards. You can go for 3,000 and 1,000 as a passer and rusher if you're Jaden Daniels won a Heisman Trophy. They don't do that at the University of Michigan. They've never done that at the University of Michigan. There have been 1,000-yard receivers at Michigan, but the most that we've seen by any single player in a season is Jeremy Gallen, who had 1,373 yards, and he needed 369 against Indiana in 2013 to get to that tally. Braylon Edwards is one of the he take up 2 spots in the top 10 for receiving yards in a season. Arguably the best offensive player that Michigan has ever produced. Arguably, right? You could also look at who has thrown for 3,000 yards at Michigan and draw some conclusions. Tom Brady is not one of those people. Chad Henne is not one of those people. J.J. McCarthy is not one of those people. 29-91 on a 15-0 team. John Navarre is one of those people. Jake Rudock is one of those people. Shea Patterson is one of those people. What I'm saying is the sauce for the University of Michigan is not one that depends on a 3,000-yard passer. In fact, you might argue they're a worse football team when they have a 3,000-yard passer. Okay, let's go with that. That means they run the football really well, and they do. Blake Corum, Hassan Haskins just here recently. Last year, Khalil Mullins came out of nowhere. I say came out of nowhere. Really picked up the slack for a Donovan Edwards that never lived up to the hype. Not really. He was great in the playoffs and great against Ohio State. But outside of that, we really don't see much of that guy. And people are going to really have to answer to why he was on the cover of EA Sports College Football 25, to which we'll point to the Ohio State game, the Iowa game, the Big Ten Championship, the college football playoff against Washington. But he didn't do much in his last year at Michigan. Okay. So you bring in Justice Haynes, who we think is going to be RB1. Jordan Marshall played well enough against Alabama for us to believe he's RB2, pushing for RB1. Okay. But Justice Haynes is also a guy that hasn't rushed for 1,000 yards in a season, hasn't had that many carries. He really did split carries with Jam Miller last year. If he gets 150, 200 touches, can he be a 1,000-yard back? No question. Yes. They have the offensive line, and they have the commitment to running the football that's going to help. But he might also have to be. This might be one of those years when you need a 1,500-yard rusher out of Justice Haynes. Why? You don't have anything at the wide receiver position. Colston Loveland became the first tight end to lead Michigan in receiving yards since 1997. That's not good. That's not good. Not only was the cupboard bare at wide receiver, it's still bare at wide receiver. There isn't a receiver on Michigan's roster right now who caught for more than 260 yards last year, period. So if you're looking for Cornelius Johnson or Roman Wilson, you're going to keep looking. The guy just ain't there. Now, can he emerge? Sure. But that is really significant for a first-year true freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood that we think is going to get the start against teams like Oklahoma, which we'll get to the schedule here in a little bit. And then defensively, Wink Martindale has things to figure out. Does he have guys? Yes. He's returning 2 of the 3 best linebackers he had last year. That's good. Rod Moore is also back. That can help you. That's going to be good. But you're losing Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. That is the best defensive tackle duo in college football last year. Maybe the last 2 years. They were the reason that Ohio State could not run the football. Now, Ohio State should have not been running the football against Michigan because you're running into the teeth of their strength. But even so, that defense held up. That defensive tackle unit held up. I expect the same to be true when Wink Martindale figures out who's going to do what in his defense that can be top 10 again. I really believe that. I also look at it and say, yeah, you didn't lose 14 guys to the NFL draft. You only lost 7. But again, that quarterback position can be an upgrade, also could be a bugaboo. Like, I continue to say, Michigan basically played last year without a quarterback. Still managed to beat Ohio State and Alabama and win 8 games after looking like going 6-6, right? Give them a functional quarterback. and they're great. It's kind of like Iowa in 2023. Phil Parker's defense. All they needed was a functional quarterback. That's it. Make the offense something that doesn't get in the way, and all of a sudden you look like Georgia 2021, 2022, a team who has not had more than 1,000-yard receiver in its history. Georgia football never had more than 1,000-yard receiver in its history, and you can't name him unless you listen to a previous segment that I did. It's not A.J. Green. It's not George Pickens. It's not Hines Ward. It's not Brock Bowers, who's tight end, but we would count it, right? It is Terrence Edwards. What? Yeah, 2002, 1,004 yards, which makes me think that the SIDs probably goofed and should have shorted him 5 yards so he can keep the zero streak intact. But what it also tells me is that you can win national championships without having a 1,000-yard receiver and a guy that throws the ball over the yard. All you got to do is run the football well and have a great defense, like Michigan did in 2023. And if that's the sauce, then that's the sauce. Go with that, right? I also think that it is important to point out that the schedule is the schedule, right? There's a test for them early. It's more of a test for Michigan than it is Oklahoma because many people believe Oklahoma is going to be good. Turned over the quarterback position to a guy in John Mateer that people like, people love. Ben Arbuckle, offensive coordinator, people like, people love. Brent Venables is going to be calling the defense against Sherrone Moore's offense, Chip Lindsey's offense. You got a freshman quarterback against Brent Venables. Good luck with that. I'm serious. Like, that's not the Sooner in me coming out. I don't like that. I just, period. If I'm Michigan, I hate Brent Venables getting to see my guy after just 2 games. No, he's going to pick us apart. We're going to have him loaded, which means we're going to be running the football. But if we can't run the football because Brent is sending to everybody, we got another problem altogether. And then we don't have anybody at wide receiver that we think we can throw the ball to bail us out. That's just not good business. That's a bad business plan. And it's in Norman. Yeah, Oklahoma is 54-11 the last decade at Norman. It's been tough to win there, even as Oklahoma has had 2 losing seasons in the last 3 years. But you open against New Mexico, which, by the way, is a Jason Eck program now, the same guy that was at Idaho, who went to Oregon, damn near vandalized them, and got the money in the bag, right? That's a team that was great. He took a bunch of those players with him to New Mexico. So that might not absolutely be an easy win, but you should win it. Then you're at Oklahoma. So, not 2 games, 1. You get New Mexico, then you're at Oklahoma. Good luck with that. Central Michigan, okay, cool. You ought to be fine. At Nebraska, that can test you. Dana Holgerson might have found something that works with Dylan Raiola. They got a guy that they like at offensive tackle. And back up here. I get it. It's Nebraska. I understand that. They turned over the defensive coordinator as well. But they went bowling last year for the first time in over almost a decade, 8 years. They feel good about themselves. They're on your level is what I'm saying, right? I could just as easily make an argument for Nebraska getting to the national championship game as I can Michigan if things go their way in 2025. Then you got your bye. Wisconsin, I still don't know what Luke Fickell's team's going to be, but we're going to know it by the time he gets to you on October 4th, right? If they're good, they're good. If they're not, they're not. But this is a Wisconsin team that we couldn't make heads or tails of that had Oregon dead to rights and just couldn't finish the thing. So they're as dangerous as Nebraska, right? Again, that game's at Nebraska, and you'll get Wisconsin at home. You're at USC. That's 2 time zones you got to cover. Penn State damn near lost that game last year. If Tyler Warren doesn't have a game of games, they do. That's one where you can get bit. It's also a traditional Rose Bowl matchup, which I think we're getting spoiled by, but I would love to see it. I don't know that Jaden Mayava is going to really attack that Wink Martindale defense the way that I would like him to see him do it, but he's going to have opportunities because Lincoln Riley is the head coach and the offensive play caller, and I really want to see that matchup. That's going to be fun. To say nothing of Denton Lynn against Chip Lindsey. That's going to be fun too. You could just as easily lose that game. Purdue, I'm getting ahead of myself. Washington, we'll see, right? Damon Williams might be a guy. I kind of wrote him off when I was talking about Ohio State. Maybe they remember last year. Maybe they don't. I can't call it with that team. Jed Fish is just kind of putting together a program and a roster that we'll just have to see it before we call it. Not unlike Kurt Signetti last year. It could be great. It could be terrible. We'll see. At Michigan State. I don't know that this is the year that Jonathan Smith figures it out, but I hope so, because if he's going to do something with Aiden, if he's going to do something with Nick, it's got to be now, right? So, you have a generational wide receiver. You have a fine to okay quarterback. What else can you do here? And that game matters, right? That's an in-state rivalry. But Michigan State is not on Michigan's level, and Michigan ought to win that game. Purdue, you're going to be Purdue. I get that Barry Odom is going to be in year one. There's Malachi Singleton's probably going to be your starter. You're going to beat Purdue. At Northwestern, you ought to win that game, but who could tell, right? Because that team has an opportunity. You beat them like they stole something last year. I understand that. But they're just as plucky as a Vanderbilt might be like last year. So I wouldn't exactly write them off, but you ought to win that game. At Maryland, you ought to win that game too, but again, plucky. We'll see. We'll see what Maryland is actually about, because they tend to fade later in the season. They tend to start fast and fade in the Mike Locksley era. And then, of course, you got Ohio State. So as we count this up, Oklahoma, SC. Yeah. Oklahoma, SC are the only two games that I think you're going to lose. Like, I'll pick against you in those games. Everybody else is a pick 'em, and then it's Ohio State, who you beat the hell out of, right, the last 4 years. They haven't beat you since 2019. And they know that, and you know that. But if that's your national championship like it was last year, and Ohio State's plan to get into the college football playoff, are we really playing the same game at that point? I don't think we are. I really don't think we are. I think that if the bar is college football playoff semifinals, you're a ways away. That's what I think. You're as far away from that this year as you were last year. If it is getting from 8 wins to 9 wins, you can do that this year. You can get to 10 wins this year. Can you make the playoff? Not so sure. I'm not so sure. I'm really not. In straight seeding, you got a shot, right? But if it because an SMU is not going to box you out like it did Alabama last year, who was a 9-win team that got left out of the playoff, right? I think you're going to have a signature win against a ranked opponent, and that might be in Oklahoma. That might be a USC. I don't think it's a Purdue. I don't think it's Michigan State. I don't think it's Northwestern. I don't think it's Maryland. I don't think it's Nebraska or New Mexico. So you're going to have to do the most with this schedule. It's not impossible. You can do this. We've seen you do this before. You play nobody in a non-conference, and then you run the table. You're playing somebody in Oklahoma this year, which is new. But again, with the controversy that surrounds this program, one of the things that I've always been rather impressed by is just how it doesn't affect the play of the players. You've had controversy after controversy, from recruiting violations to sign stealing to the Matt Weiss deal. And still, the players, they go out and they win football games for you. And I see that as something that can still occur and still should occur. What I am curious about is when you get to play teams that have ranking next to their name, what will you do? Because I don't think you're going to get that many opportunities. Again, it could be SC, Ohio State, Oklahoma. That might be all you see. But if you can go get 2 of those 3, probably going to go play in the playoffs, provided you didn't drop a game to Purdue, provided you didn't drop a game to Northwestern, and then you give people reason to doubt you, like Alabama dropping a game to Vanderbilt and a bad Oklahoma. The Tennessee one, we don't really care. People forget. Alabama started 4-0. 4-0 with a win against the number 1 ranked Georgia team and didn't make the playoff. That can happen to you. So don't bank on the Ohio State win at the end of the season. Make sure that all of your ducks are lined up in a row so that you have every chance to get into this thing, whether or not you make the playoff or whether or not you make the Big Ten championship game. That's my worry. Can you get that done? If you can get that done, yeah, you're looking at a 10-win season. You're probably looking at the playoff.